fibers, because luckily vagus nerve, which is cranial nerve 10, okay, takes care of it for me. So my vagus nerve will simply come and go through plexuses, make their way to target organs, and pretty much synapse directly onto the target organ. Where we look at the first, second, third fiber that's existing, that's pretty much taking care of stuff up here in the head. For example, the eyes. Do you happen to remember what happened to the pupils from the sympathetic division?
Dilated.
They dilated because you need to see more clearly. And if they dilate, they're letting in more light, they're letting you see more specifically the things that are around you. So now the parasympathetic division is simply going to come in and let the pupils constrict. It's going to stop this, or start, I should say, stuff that's going to help with digestion, like the salivation, the mucus for breaking stuff up, that sort of thing. Under the rest of these organs, what happened, for example, to digestion from the sympathetic division? It shut down. Do you happen to remember me saying that with the neurotransmitters, some of them are going to excite, some of them are going to inhibit? In the sympathetic division, that is supposed to excite, okay, for the digestive system, it inhibited. For the parasympathetic division, that should now be inhibiting, it is exciting the digestive system. Do you see now how some of those neurotransmitters can excite or inhibit?
Mm-hmm.
So the parasympathetic division, on the sacral portion, working on the pelvic area of the body. So my cranial is taking care of pretty much everything else, okay? And it will be a little bit selective, okay? The biggest thing it wants to do, start digestion back up and start going to the bathroom so that all the wastes that were created in the body, we get rid of them. For example, what happened to skeletal muscle in the sympathetic division? If my job was to fight or flee, that skeletal muscle getting a huge amount of blood flow. Y'all should remember the structure of skeletal muscle from part 1. So I'm getting a huge blood flow, lots of nutrients, probably getting tons of action potentials, getting that muscle ready to contract and move, which means I'm getting a lot of calcium use. I'm making a lot of energy in those little mitochondria. So that means those mitochondria are needing to get oxygen, i.e. the increase in the respiration rate, but at the same time, that's producing waste. But also, I got to be making energy in the form of glycolysis, where I'm only getting 2 little ATPs, but I'm getting a whole great big huge lactic acid. Do y'all see where I'm going with this? You cannot let that waste build up in those cells. it has to get rid of it. So parasympathetic wants to start the system back up where we can defecate and urinate. Isn't that cool?
Would it ever be possible for the parasympathetic to not occur? Or is it always
With the human body, anything is possible. Okay? Now, that would be indicative of something being extremely wrong. But the sympathetic division, how many of y'all in here are actually calm? Sitting in here thinking, I'm so happy to be in my AP class. You know, I'm just going to kick back and be the happiest student on the planet because I love my professor, I love my class, I love the topic, and y'all just in here just as chill as you can be. Or are you sitting here going, okay, how much more time before she stops talking? When does class end? When class ends, oh my goodness, I gotta go to work. I gotta swing by the grocery store. I gotta put gas in my car. I gotta think about buying tires. How am I gonna change oil in my car? What am I gonna do? All right, just chill. Thank you. I had a response. That sympathetic tends to stay a little more all the time, okay? You're just kind of hoping that maybe by 8 o'clock tonight, you get to sit down and go, and then, you know, within 10 minutes, you're, okay? But sometimes that can even go awry, okay? Like, for example, people who may suffer panic disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, okay? So they can actually have the sympathetic be a little more active. The parasympathetic's trying to kick in, but it just isn't. It doesn't have, it's selective.
Just out of curiosity, if when the sympathetic kicks in, I mean, I feel like they've heard about people like, you know, urinating or defecating themselves. Is it just due to the shut off of that? Like when the sympathetic kicks in and it kind of just, they lose control over.
Have you ever heard the term scared blankly?
Yeah.
Okay, that happens. Okay, and yes, the people will literally lose the control of those parts of the body.
Is that because of like what point in that process you're at when it kicks in?
Yes.
Okay.
In other words, it's probably most likely going to be something extremely traumatic.
Oh no, I meant like if you were probably going to be going to the bathroom in the next like 5 minutes anyway, then when it kicks in, it's just gonna happen versus like.
It will probably like if you're thinking about that type of situation, when the sympathetic kicks in, you're gonna feel that urge, and it's almost like you can't control it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you'll have to go.
Yeah.
You'll have to go, and then it'll shut it off.
Yeah.
It'll shut it off. But there are times, like maybe an extreme car accident, a battle, something that happened extremely quickly. Yeah. And it can happen. So this parasympathetic division, okay, the ones that come from the sacral region, do you guys remember splanchnic nerves? Just a particular route through ganglia, okay? Well, they're going to go through a plexus. They're trying to show you right here, okay? And the fibers that are coming out, they're just simply, remember, they're not divergent on a whole lot. They pretty much go to their target organ. And they're going to mostly go to areas of the pelvic region. Some make their way to a small portion of the rectum and the small intestine and the colon. But for the most part, the ones from the sacral region are heading towards the pelvic region. So the parasympathetic division.
I saw that there's for the parasympathetic, it goes to what are the egg sacs called? I forgot. The ovary, yeah. Is there a part of the sympathetic that strikes up the ovaries as well?
Because at the time that the sympathetic division is kicked in, okay, I talked about it in relationship to digestion, but also at the time of the sympathetic division, it doesn't really pay attention to those reproductive organs, okay? Have you ever, like for example, with females who do extreme sports, sometimes their menstruation stops, okay? This is why. Because when they're doing extreme sports, think about it, you're constantly having your body in the sympathetic mode. So it doesn't really concern itself with getting everything to the reproductive organs that it's supposed to. Yeah,
That makes sense.
so when the body has that time to rest and digest, it'll also bring blood flow and everything back to those reproductive organs. Because remember, the goal, procreate this species. But in early man, because this is where it gets traced back to, okay? Early man, when he was worried about having to fight the saber-toothed tiger every single day. I mean, think about it. Every time he left the cave, probably had to face that tiger. And was probably just like, what in the world? And so a lot of times, sympathetic stayed a little more in motion, and they probably didn't have as many children because that meant somebody was going to have to care for them and take care of them and so forth. Give them what they needed, like the foodstuffs and everything growing up. Which is kind of interesting. So another division that we have to look at is something called the enteric nervous system. So at this point, I've had my autonomic nervous system with the two divisions, sympathetic, parasympathetic. Okay, now, in times of extreme stress, for example, people at war who have to go fight a battle, and they're out in the field, they have maybe the MRE that they get to eat once a day, okay? And they're having to constantly be on guard, all right? But that can also be a tremendous stressor that happens in your life, okay? For example, a little over 8 years ago, I lost my son to very tragic means, okay? My only child, very tragic means. And because it happened in the way that it did, it created the stress on me. And I was, of course, in that sympathetic mode for a long time, okay? Even though you may be taking in foodstuffs, if the sympathetic division is kicked in for that long, the body still needs to get nutrients, or the body would deteriorate to a point that it would not recover. So we have a nervous system division that will work